Howdy folks, and welcome back to World of Warships with Rear Admiral Jingles, where today, newbie gamer dude in the Italian Tier 10 battleship, the Christopher Columbus, had an interesting epicenter match here on the Northern Waters map. So, Christopher Columbus, like me, just a little bit crap, most famous for getting very lost on the way to India. His namesake here in the game, the Italian Tier 10 battleship, is definitely not a little bit crap, although it does have certain weaknesses. This ship's main strength, and also probably its main weakness, is its 16, yes, you heard that right, 16 main battery guns. The problem, well, there are a couple of problems. First, they're only 15-inch in caliber. Now, 15-inch guns are absolutely fantastic if you're on the Warspite at Tier 6, but they're not that great if you're on the Christopher Columbus at Tier 10, because a 15-inch armor-piercing shell can only overmatch 26mm of armor, which means that the armor-piercing shells fired by these guns are not going to be a whole lot of use against enemy battleships unless they're at medium range and showing you a nice big fat broadside to shoot at. In fact, with only 26mm of overmatch capability, you're even going to find it a bit of a struggle against angled cruisers. Next, the range of the guns is pretty bad, 18.9 kilometers. Now you might be thinking, oh hang on, shots coming in from the Yamato across the map. Maybe Gamer Dude is angling in successfully, nice. But yes, you may be thinking, well, just fit the artillery plotting room modifications to extend the range. Well, you can't do that because they're only available to American battleships, and the strength of these armor-piercing shells, if they can be said to have a strength, is at medium to close range. They have terrible performance at long range. They'll have even worse performance if you extend the range further. Not that you can anyway, because this is an Italian battleship. Oh, this doesn't sound very good, Jingles. Is there anything good about these guns? Well, yeah. She does have 16 of them, which means that the Christopher Columbus enjoys the heaviest broadside shell throw weight in the game, better even than the Vermont's 12 18-inch guns. The problem, of course, is the armor piercing, which is only really useful at medium range on flat broadside targets. However, she does have access to semi-armor piercing because she's an Italian battleship. This does of course mean that she doesn't get high explosive shells, but the semi-armor piercing is really good. The guns also have one other very significant advantage, and this is something that doesn't show up in a list of gun stats like rate of fire, range, damage output, and so on and so on. Those two rear turrets can rotate a full 360 degrees, which means that it is extremely easy for this ship to keep all 16 of those guns in the fight. Oof. Newbie Gamer Dude just took, and is continuing to take, some punishing high explosive damage from the Alexander Nevsky over there. He's not using his damage control, even though he does have a double fire. Because it's just fire damage. He's in a battleship, he's got to heal. He can heal back almost all of that. Plus, there's not an awful lot of point in extinguishing a fire if you're still being spammed with high explosive. One thing that you are definitely going to need to do in order to make the most of the flexibility of the guns of the Christopher Columbus is spend your first captain skill point at Tier 1 in the gun feeder skill, which reduces the time taken to swap ammunition types by 50% if the guns are loaded. Like here, for example, he's waiting for the SAP to load, because he only had a couple of seconds to go, and then he switches to the armor piercing, and it just takes slightly more than 7 seconds. And I think he switched to the armor piercing in order to try to finish off the Alexander Nevsky. He doesn't have a broadside to shoot out there, and the range is bad. There's the Nevsky, but he's probably going to die anyway, so he holds his fire. Sure enough, the Nevsky goes down. Now he has the problem of having armor piercing loaded and only having angled targets to shoot at long range. Something that the armor piercing shells on this ship are definitely not good for. Now he does of course have the option of switching back very quickly to semi-armor piercing if he ends up having a good target to shoot at with the SAP, or if he doesn't have a good target to shoot at with the AP. And he really kind of doesn't. But he's not detected, so he can afford to bide his time and wait for the right moment. You'd best not wait too long, however, because the enemy team is starting to build up a points lead. And unfortunately, the real MVP on the team at the moment is the Shimakaze in the central ring on the map. Now, that wasn't bad actually from the armor-piercing shells on this thing, but, well, it's a Thunderer, it's not terribly well armoured, and he was mostly broadside. He's staying with the armor piercing for now, but check out the Shimakaze. That guy's been holding on to that central epicenter ring since the beginning of the game. He very nearly managed to grab that central ring, but then got cock-blocked at the absolute last second by an enemy Halland, who is still in there, and has been joined by the enemy Elbing, who just got spotted by the friendly Manfred von Richthofen as he sent aircraft over, spotting both of the enemy destroyers in the process. Now, unfortunately, check out the damage of the semi-armor piercing against the Thunderer. Yep, 2 salvos of over 6,000 each, not bad. Unfortunately, Italian battleship semi-armor piercing only does 10% of its potential damage against destroyers for reasons that have never been made clear to me. That's just the way it is. Also, while it might appear on paper that this ship, along with most of the other Italian battleships, has a powerful secondary battery, the majority of those secondaries are only 90mm guns. Such a weedy and pathetic calibre that even with the benefit of the IFAG skill, their high explosive shells can't even penetrate the armour plating of tier 8, 9 or 10 destroyers. So if you're looking for help against destroyers, don't go relying on Italian battleships in general, and the Christopher Columbus in particular. Meanwhile, newbie gamer dude, a little bit exposed on this flank, he only has an Ohio with him. He's popped his exhaust smoke generator, which allows him to get those fires under control without being spotted, and also allows him to keep manoeuvring at full speed. This exhaust smoke generator is a feature common to Italian battleships and cruisers, and allows him to go undetected while moving at full speed, providing he doesn't fire his guns, because the smoke firing penalty on these things is astronomical. He's using this brief window of concealment to get himself turned around so he's not presenting a nice big fat juicy broadside to the Stalingrad and the Montana down there, and he also used the ammo feeder skill to switch from piercing, which would have been mostly useless against a heavily angled cruiser like that, and instead load the semi-armor piercing. And while he's doing that, I'd like to draw your attention to the scores at the top of the screen. The enemy team are 200 points ahead. And our hero in the Shimakaze is still clinging on to that central ring by the skin of his teeth. And he's finally gotten a little bit of support from this cluster of idiots over here. The Stalingrad just popped his radar, although nobody seems to be actually doing anything about the destroyers that have been lit up. And unfortunately, despite holding on to that central ring for the entire game thus far, that Shimakaze, who is begging for help against the destroyers, is going to be forced to evacuate and hand the central ring to the enemy team as well. Newbie Gamer Dude's team are desperately trying to throw this match as hard as they possibly can. This is going to be one of those matches that will not be decided by whichever team plays the best. It'll be decided by whichever team manages to throw the hardest, and there's going to be some stiff competition between the teams for that privilege. The enemy team are now nearly 300 points ahead. And the friendly Ohio, who is Newbie Gamer Dude's only backup and support on this end of the map, has tucked himself in between those two islands over there to protect himself from the Stalingrad and the Montana down to the south. Unfortunately, his angling against the Stalingrad and the Montana means he's given a nice big fat broadside, yes, to the Thunderer. Barely 10 kilometres off his port beam. So that was less than good. And this does of course mean that the Montana and the Stalingrad now have nobody else to shoot at other than Newbie Gamer Dude, and it looks like the enemy Midway's coming in to join the party as well. He fires blind against the Stalingrad, and this is an incredibly dangerous moment, because he is giving broadside to those two enemy ships down to the south, but he manages to get the turn executed before either the Montana or the Stalingrad could capitalise on his momentary vulnerability there, and he does take out the Stalingrad, activating Luigi Sansonetti, his captain's far-reach talent, which gives his main battery guns a much-needed 8% range boost, but which you can only activate once per battle. So, hooray! Except the team are still 300 points behind, actually slightly more than 300 points now, and they still don't have one of these capture rings to their name. The Thunderer, however, is showing an unhealthy amount of ankle, and he has the AP loaded and the range is good. Oh, come on, 800, there we go, finished him off. Just when Newbie Gamer Dude thought he was going to catch a break after killing the Stalingrad down to the south and only having what he thought was a half-health Montana to worry about, that's when the enemy Ohio enters the fight, almost on full health. And the Ohio is a very dangerous opponent, armed with 18-inch guns, although it doesn't have a lot of them. Oh, hang on a minute. Is he going to turn to get broadside to shoot at this range with armor piercing loaded? Here we go. Fingers crossed. Oh, well, it wasn't bad. But hang on, who's he shooting at? Because it's not Newbie Gamer Dude. Let me take control of the... Oh, yeah. Friendly Thunderer giving an Ohio's 18-inch guns a big broadside target to shoot at. Desperately trying to throw the game as hard as he possibly can, and only saved by RNG. The Ohio is probably cursing his luck, because honestly, with a target like that to shoot at that kind of range, the Ohio was robbed. Meanwhile, Newbie Gamer Dude once again using the ammo feeder skill to quickly switch from armor piercing to semi-armor piercing. He's going to try his luck against the Ohio. This should be pretty good. He is angled. That's what the semi-armor piercing is for. And... oh, that was kind of shit. 3 hits from 16 guns. What is going on? I'll tell you what's going on. Newbie Gamer Dude's team are throwing way harder than the enemy team are. Despite being up a kill, they're nearly 400 points behind. And it's once again our hero in the Shimakaze who got utterly failed by the team trying to hold on to that central epicenter ring, who's in the process of flipping the outer epicenter ring. Newbie Gamer Dude again using the ammo feeder skill to quickly switch between the semi-armor piercing and the armor piercing, but the Montana appears to be starting to make a turn. Actually, maybe the Christopher Columbus would be, although he is starting to turn out as well, but hey, what the hell. A better target than the Montana. We're not expecting great things of these shells, however. Yeah, that wasn't bad actually, probably better than I was expecting. Horribly slow reload on these guns as well, by the way. I totally forgot to mention that. A base 37-second reload time on 15-inch guns at tier 10 is absolutely shit. So it's often better to just let them finish loading and then use the ammo feeder skill to quickly reload the shells that you want based on what's happened in the intervening time and what you're going to do more damage with. And, well, yeah. Technically, broadside target, armor piercing. But, well, at that kind of range with the penetration on these shells, it's a bit of a lottery. Meanwhile, hang on a second, Ein Minuten bitte, what's going on here? Newbie Gamer Dude's team have managed to take control of the 2 outer epicenter rings. Are the enemy team now trying to throw even harder than Newbie Gamer Dude's team? Well, it's possible, but don't rule his team out just yet. This match is far from over. The enemy's last remaining destroyer, the Elving, is grimly holding on to that central ring, and our hero in the Shimakaze, whose back must be suffering from considerable strain right now, is desperately trying to flush him out, and honestly, as long as he doesn't get spotted from the air, that should be pretty easy to do. Stalingrad has nailed the Hindenburg, who was trying to push into the outer ring. Shots out. Ooh, there we go. That's the lottery with the armor-piercing shells from the Christopher Columbus. He pummeled the Montana, he pummeled the Thunderer earlier. He did next to nothing against the Ohio, under the exact same circumstances. The team have managed to close the gap to around about 100 points. He's got the island between himself and the Montana, and he's closing in to take his chances with the armor-piercing lottery against the enemy Christopher Columbus, who admittedly is turning in. And those were mostly superstructure shots, but it was a good amount of damage. That's just activated the Concealed Reserves talent, which means that all of his consumables now last 10% longer. If he continues on this course, and I don't see how he can do anything other than continue on this course, because to turn either way would be given broadside to not just the enemy Christopher Columbus, but also the enemy Ohio, so he's kind of committed here. Still got the AP loaded, and he's holding his fire until he gets the best possible shot, but he's not going to get a better shot than that. The enemy Christopher Columbus is turning in. He's concerned about exposing broadside to the Montana here as he passes through the gap. He's going to try to take the Montana out, and that's probably the best use of his rear turrets. He might actually kill him here. No, was not to be, but hold on. What the hell is the enemy Christopher Columbus doing? He's going for the ram. I don't think he understands that when you're down 3 kills, you absolutely definitely don't want to be trading. But he's determined to throw. There it is. And of course, Newbie Gamer Dude was entirely happy to take that trade. He's now at 286,000 damage. It's 7 against 4, the Montana is an easy kill, and his team control all 3 of the epicenter rings. What could possibly go wrong here? Well, I hope you're all strapped in, because the Elbing, which, let me remind you, is probably the worst destroyer in the game when it comes to destroyer-on-destroyer combat. He is fighting the Shimakaze and the Halland. And he's nearly winning. Halland, why are you giving broadside to the Elbing's AP? What is wrong with you? Why are you not firing AP yourself? He's going to kill you if you're not careful. Well, they managed to take him out, but it nearly costs the Halland his life. Meanwhile, the Stalingrad, I can't even see his health bar, he's got so little health remaining, is charging an Ohio. Let me remind you, the Ohio is armed with 18-inch guns. The Stalingrad is not. The team are only 100 points ahead. They cannot afford to be throwing ships away like that. Now watch what happens between the Ohio, who's on about 5,000 health, the Yamato, who's on about 50,000 health, and the Thunderer over there. I don't know if the Ohio realises that if he sails any further forward, he's going to be given a big flat broadside to the Thunderer. Although he kind of doesn't have much choice because he's having to try to angle against the Yamato's 18-inch guns. Not that it really makes that much difference, because the Thunderer is completely ignoring this beautiful broadside shot that he has at the Ohio because he's tunnel visioning in on the Montana. To be fair, the Montana is providing an equally juicy target, but it's at longer range, so there's less chance of a kill. And he doesn't kill the Montana, but he absolutely would have killed the Ohio, who is now aiming at a nice big fat broadside Yamato, who absolutely just had to get all of his guns bearing, didn't he? Oh dear. All the Yamato had to do was keep his nose pointed towards the Ohio, and he would have killed him, because he had 10 times the Ohio's health, and the Ohio's 18-inch guns can't overmatch the Yamato's bout. Honestly, I don't know what's funnier, the fact that he just gift-wrapped a kill to the Ohio that he didn't need to do, or his reaction in chat. This game is bullshit, he says. Dude, you gave broadside to an 18-inch gun-armed battleship at a range of 6 kilometers. What did you think was going to happen? Meanwhile, the rest of the team, nearly 300 points ahead, still desperately trying to win harder, but only succeeding in throwing, as the Thunderer, who has thus far managed to lose a gunfight against a Montana who should have been dead 5 minutes ago. And the Halland, desperate to one-up the Thunderer, the game is won. They're still 200 points ahead. They have all 3 of the epicenter rings. He's got torpedoes away. He absolutely doesn't need to start shooting at the Montana, so there it is. Gives his position away. His torpedoes are going to kill the Montana anyway, but he's just given the Montana's secondaries a chance to kill him, and they very nearly do. But by some miracle, Halland does survive. He does not give the enemy team even more breathing space and time for the midway to turn around the loss, because let's face it, judging on the throw performance of both teams thus far in this match, I wouldn't rule it out. But despite everybody's best efforts to throw as hard as they possibly can, Newbie Gamer Dude's team just weren't able to throw as hard and as consistently as the enemy team in this match. That's it for today, folks. I hope you enjoyed Season 1 of the Game of Throws here in World of Warships. And as always, take care, stay safe, and I'll catch you next time.